Hello, my name is James Cordiner. I run Voluntaryist Academy. For those of you who don't know, Voluntaryist Academy is an educational platform dedicated to the principles of non-aggression, self-ownership, and the ethical philosophy of voluntarism. Here, or there rather, we reject the mythology of political authority and embrace the timeless truth that all human interaction should be grounded in consent and moral integrity. Through rigorous study, in-depth courses, and accessible materials, Voluntaryist Academy equips individuals with the tools to critically examine the foundations of coercive systems and to replace them with voluntary, peaceful alternatives rooted in natural law. I'd like to begin my speech by quoting Edward Abbey from his book, A Voice Crying in the Wilderness. He said, "Anarchism is not a romantic fable, but the hard-headed realization, based on 5,000 years of experience, that we cannot entrust the management of our lives to kings, priests, politicians, generals, and county commissioners." A long time ago, in a galaxy not so far away, there was no word for freedom. It had to be invented, because when freedom was stolen, when the people became enslaved, either by debt or by way of coercion, there became a need to come up with a way to identify what was taken. The ancient Sumerians called freedom Amaji. It is recognized as the first known written reference to the concept of freedom in all of human history. The word originates from the noun ama, which means mother, spelled A-M-A, sometimes with the enclitic dative case marker A-R, so it would appear as Amar, A-M-A-R, and the combined with the present participle G, or gi. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's spelled G-I. And that means return, restore, or put back. So, thus literally meaning returning to mother. I would like you all to consider this throughout my speech. Throughout my speech, you'll hear me use the term the system. The system. I'll refer to other systems, but never as the system. Okay, take note of that difference, please. What I'm referring to when I say the system is the organized crime syndicate that has created a culture around obedience. They have created this culture with various trauma-based mind control techniques. They are satanic, and they want you to be satanic too. They want us as their slaves. They need to be fought. They need to be stopped. But how can this fight happen, right? How can we win? You see, there is a lot of talk in the freedom and liberty community about various topics that have little to nothing to do with actual solutions to the causal factors for the condition in which we live. In fact, it seems to me that as more time goes by, more and more attention seems to be on these almost meaningless so-called solutions to do with economics, gun control, borders, schooling, currency, foreign and domestic affairs, so on and so on. All of which, by now, should be obvious, seen as obvious traps that the mind can get caught in, that are strategically placed there in order to stick one in the mindset of a statist. It traps you there, hardly ever leaving room to reject statism outright. I like to refer to these things as bear traps for your thoughts. This is mind control, mind you. You know what? I get it. I do. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to get done. However, without really getting to the causal factors, no real long-lasting solution is possible. That is what needs to be figured out. How do we change the conversation back to causality without segregating and ostracizing people? What even is the real cause for all this disorder? For this slavery? The majority of people believe that we need law, quote unquote law, in order for us to have order. But I have some bad news for you. The law has never stopped anybody from doing anything. Allow me to clarify on this. What is commonly referred to as the law is man's law, aka political scribbles. This has never, I repeat, never ever stopped anyone from doing anything. The masses choose to obey man's law because of one of two things. In my humble opinion, they choose to obey man's law because either it makes actual moral sense, which I would argue challenges the need to enforce it, or because of the fear of the consequences of disobeying. This second one is, whether you know it or not, the primary factor for obedience. In fact, the only two things that actually stop people from committing actions that do initiate harm against their fellow man is their own conscious awareness of the world around them, mixed in with a conscience, neither of which has anything to do with man's law. Okay? That, my friends, is exactly what we need to focus on. I'd like to read to you the words of Murray Rothbard at this point, taken from For a New Liberty, the Libertarian Manifesto. He writes, "Natural rights is the cornerstone of a political philosophy which, in turn, is embedded in a greater structure of natural law. Natural law rests on the insight that we live in a world of more than one, in fact, a vast number of entities, and that each entity has distinct and specific properties, a distinct nature, which can be investigated by man's reason, by his sense perception and mental faculties. For instance, copper has a distinct nature and behaves in a certain way, and so do iron, salt, etc. The species man, therefore, has a specifiable nature, as does the world around him and the ways of interaction between them. To put it with undue brevity, the activity of each inorganic and organic entity is determined by its own nature and by the nature of the other entities with which it comes in contact. Specifically, while the behavior of plants and at least the lower animals is determined by their biological nature or perhaps by their instincts, the nature of man is such that each individual person must, in order to act, choose his own ends and employ his own means in order to attain them. Possessing no automatic instincts, each man must learn about himself and the world, use his mind to select values, learn about cause and effect, and act purposefully to maintain himself and advance his life. Since men can think, feel, evaluate, and act only as individuals, it becomes vitally necessary for each man's survival and prosperity that he be free to learn, choose, develop his faculties, and act upon his knowledge and values. This is the necessary path of human nature. To interfere with and cripple this process by using violence goes profoundly against what is necessary by man's nature for his life and prosperity. Violent interference with a man's learning and choices is therefore profoundly anti-human. It violates the natural law of man's needs." Pretty simple, right? Maybe, maybe not. Brings up the question to, how do we avoid this violent interference? Voluntaryism is how we do that. Studying voluntaryism. Voluntaryism is the basis of anarchist philosophy. It emphasizes that all human interaction must be consensual and free from coercion and force. At its core, voluntarism rejects the initiation of force, whether by individuals or entities, asserting that such aggression is inherently unethical and immoral. This principle forms the foundation of anarchist thought, advocating for a society where relationships and systems are rooted in autonomy, respect, and mutual informed consent. In a voluntary society, all interactions are built on free and willing participation. Contracts and agreements are entered voluntarily, ensuring no one is coerced into unwanted obligations. Disputes are resolved through mutual consent or neutral arbitration rather than imposed by governments. Communities and markets thrive on reciprocity, enabling individuals to freely exchange goods, services, and ideas. Voluntarism aligns seamlessly with anarchism, rejecting the use of force in favor of cooperative systems that uphold individual rights and conduct ethical collaboration. State force makes it impossible for true happiness and fulfilled lives to exist today. State force compels otherwise peaceful people to enslave each other according to this or that politician's will, turning would-be brothers and sisters into enemies, one group claiming master, while truthfully both are made slaves, only to have the roles reversed seemingly at random, depending on the outcome of the ritualistic elections held to decide which party will take power next. These parties have always been and will forever remain hostile armies looking to conquer at whatever cost. Association with these parties removes one's own individuality and replaces it with collectivist groupthink. It is a sacrifice of your own will and intelligence, your own free choice, and the free choice of others. Voluntarism and anarchism offer a vision of a world where liberty and freedom are not compromised by coercion, and relationships are defined by mutual respect and informed consent. By rejecting the inherent violence of the government, principled anarchists, voluntarists, and libertarians, even libertarians, champion a society that prioritizes freedom, ethical collaboration, and self-determination. Is there a way to live that would make the state obsolete while avoiding the initiation of a hot revolution on the part of the people? I think so. What I've put together is a list of 7 criteria that any individual can study and practice to not only make their life better, but also play a role in improving the lives of those around them. These 7 criteria actually play a huge role in making the state obsolete. And I have identified these as the fundamentals of freedom. Now, mind you, you do not have to necessarily be a voluntarist to meet any of these criteria, to participate with any of this. You simply need to be human. But oddly enough, you may find out by the end of this that these words are synonymous. But if you're already there right now, congratulations. So here we go. And yeah, I get it. I understand how this might sound. You know, you're asking yourself, why this guy's a voluntarist? What's he doing telling us how to live? This guy's a hypocrite. Well, I'm not a hypocrite because in times like these, where there's so much immorality going on and there's so much moral relativism going on, you got to speak the truth. We'll find out how important that is as we go through this, but this is helpful stuff. So let's continue. Number 1 is think things through. And that sounds pretty simple, right? But if we really take a second look and apply some critical thought to this, it becomes much more complicated than we thought in the first place. And as a result, all the more important to consider. In the environment in which we live, you're always met with various stimulus or stimuli that you're going to face and you're going to be responding to. That's just how it works. But between stimulus and response, there exists a small space. And in that space exists your freedom to make choices. And over time, with practice and with this in mind, you're going to be able to sharpen your ability to think quickly in that space. Or you're also going to learn that not every question or stimuli needs an immediate response. So sometimes you're going to be able to learn that I don't know is an appropriate response to a question. Or to do nothing is actually still to do something. Like Geddy Lee from Rush said, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. But the point here is that you need to start thinking about your thinking as well. And this is something called metacognition. Metacognition is the awareness and the understanding of one's own thought processes, often described as thinking about thinking or knowing about knowing. Epistemology aside, I mean, we're talking about metacognition here, but metacognition involves monitoring, regulating, and reflecting on how you learn, solve problems, or make decisions. And it consists of two main components. The first of which is metacognitive knowledge. Metacognitive knowledge is the awareness of your own learning strengths and weaknesses, understanding of different learning strategies, and knowing when and why to use them. And then second is metacognitive regulation, which is the active control of your cognitive processes. Planning how to approach a task, monitoring your understanding during learning, and evaluating your performance to adjust strategies. That's how you control your cognitive processes right there. This self-awareness allows individuals to become more effective learners, make better decisions, and adapt their approaches based on experience. I'd also like to point out here that Carl Jung's shadow work, which is the practice of exploring and integrating the unconscious parts of yourself, often called the shadow self, that you've repressed, denied, or rejected due to societal norms, upbringing, or personal experiences, is also an incredible method for self-discovery and to uncover the motivations or the things that make you think. This process fosters authenticity, emotional resilience, and deeper self-awareness. It helps you understand how your mind works. Okay. So that's a lot about, some inner work. We're going to develop some more about that. This is number 2. Number 2 is remain calm in thought, emotion, and action. Now, okay, we just covered thought in number 1, and that's just the beginning. Emotions and then actions follow thought in that order. And, thoughts, emotions, and actions are interconnected elements that form a dynamic cycle influencing behavior and mental well-being. Thoughts are internal ideas or self-talk that shape our perception of events. They can be positive, negative, or neutral, and often stem from beliefs or past experiences, right? But for example, thinking that I can't do this may lead to feelings of anxiety or inadequacy. This includes lying to yourself. You have to stop lying to yourself. This is so important. And because this is the only way that any of this works. Telling yourself the truth creates a stable foundation on which the rest of this can be built. If you're not telling yourself the truth, you can't even begin to tell other people the truth. Okay? You need to know where you're at so you know where you can go. Okay? And this is very difficult for people to do. I mean, to really stop lying to themselves. But remember, some of the most rewarding work is the most difficult work that we're tasked to do. It's persistent work as well. It's never going to stop Because as you go through life, you're met with different stimuli. It never stops. The bombardment just comes and it just keeps going. And, but you have to stay balanced with the truth and tell yourself the truth first. Emotions arise in response to thoughts. And so if you're telling yourself the truth about different stimuli, then your emotions are going to be more in line with the truth as well. Okay? But emotions are the body's reaction to internal and external stimuli. But if the internal stimuli can be our own thoughts as well. So that's why it's so important to think things that are true as well. If you're, the internal, the inner talk there, the inner dialogue, the self-talk needs to ring true. And the external stimuli, which you have little to no control over in most cases, but if you're the exposure to that external stimuli, if you're telling yourself the truth of, what's making you react that way after a process of inner work and self-development, some self-actualization, then the chances are you're going to have a much better time at dealing with external stimuli when you are aligned with yourself. Okay? But these emotions include feelings like joy, fear, anger, or sadness, and often come with physical sensations. Emotions act as fuel, driving motivation or avoidance. And, I just want to point out here, I'm not trying to inspire or tell anybody here to be not feeling emotions, right? We got to feel emotions. Don't be a sociopath. Okay. Don't be someone that doesn't feel the full range of emotions. Don't make yourself into that person. We just need to have control over the emotions. You feel it, process it, let it go, work through it, and move on. Okay. You don't let it control you. You don't let it hold you in a place and get you stuck in the mud. You got to be in control of your emotions. Next in this cycle is actions. And actions are the behaviors we perform based on our thoughts and emotions. These can be constructive or unhelpful. Actions reinforce thoughts, completing the cycle. Actions can either be moral or immoral. Yes, it's that binary. It is binary. It's either moral or immoral. That's it. Case closed. Period. The end. Done. And your actions not only bounce back and have an effect on you, but they have an effect on everyone else around you. Like your actions are like a stone being thrown in a calm, serene pond, and then you disrupt the surface of the water, causing ripples to go out in all directions. And eventually, yes, it dissipates because your area of influence is only so large, but you're still influencing your environment. Okay? So you have to be conscious of what you're doing and how you're acting, because it has an effect on your environment, which in turn starts the cycle all over again and in somebody else's mind as well. And so if you're going through this cycle, other people are going through this cycle. That's why it's so important to understand your behaviors and the effect that it has on other people. Epictetus, a famous Stoic philosopher, Epictetus, said, some things are in our control and others are not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and in a word, whatever our own are our own actions. Okay? Understanding this is the beginning of the path to self-ownership. Number 3 is speak the truth. I'm of the opinion that speech is the ultimate action. The truth is, not enough attention gets paid to the weight of the words that are spoken out into the universe. They carry with them a vibration that has an incredible effect on the minds that those words reach. Imagine, if you will, the vibratory effect that music has on water. It's pretty incredible stuff. If you've never seen it, go look up a video of like a dish of water placed in a room with like a speaker playing like, some heavy metal music or some classical music or whatever. The vibrations cause the water to move in certain ways, and it's proof of vibratory effect on the world around us, and things that we can't see, like the vibrations of sound, still have an effect on your environment. Okay, then this is incredible stuff. Now, words carry a similar effect, albeit a smaller version than the musical effect, but you get the point. Because the world gets spoken into existence, okay? Telling the truth to other people is an act of mercy, in fact, when you consider the damage that is done by lies. Our words affect much more than many consider. Speaking the truth is the morally right thing to do. In times when censorship and violence are so accepted, speaking the truth isn't always easy. But doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it is the right thing to do regardless. And you do it because it's right and not because of some reward. In fact, the real reward is knowing that you did the right thing. And just so you know, if a system can only exist because of a lie, then it deserves to be destroyed with the truth. Number 4, do not steal anything spiritual or material. This also could mean do not initiate harm. Morality is not a construct of the mind. Okay? It's not. It is built in nature itself. It is behavior-based. It is based on what you do in the world, how you act. It has nothing to do with your beliefs, your whims, your preferences, or your likes and dislikes. To say oranges are delicious would be a constructual idea of the mind. Oranges are delicious. I think that. Oranges simply are what they are in nature, though. Whether or not they are considered delicious is only happening in the mind. It's a response to stimuli. Morality, however, is entirely defined by behavior in the physical domain, whether an action taken is harmful or non-harmful to another being. Okay? You cannot decide for yourself the morality of your actions. You can only align your behaviors to morality. Actions that you take that may harm yourself have nothing to do with morality. And that certainly doesn't mean that you should harm yourself. Please don't. I'm just pointing out that your body is your property. I don't want anyone to go hurting themselves, but it is your property. If you want to go and, take your skateboard and try to ollie down a set of 20 stairs, go for it. I think if you land it, that would be pretty sick. You do what you want with your property, though. Ultimately, what I'm saying here, that is, if no harm has been done to another being, nothing immoral has taken place. So, say it with me now. As morality increases, freedom increases. And the opposite is just as true. The 7 deadly sins of the religious variety are all quote-unquote sins that point to things you do to yourself, which do have an effect. Okay, but what I'm really talking about here is what has been referred to as, has commonly been referred to these days as the real 7 deadly sins. And what I mean here by sins is immoral actions. In this case, the real sins are actions done to others. The real deadly sins are murder, which is the theft of another's life, lying, which is the theft of the truth, trespassing, the theft of one's peace in their privately owned space, assault, which is the theft of one's physical well-being in the form of physical harm, rape, which is the theft of one's ability to choose or consent to a sexual partner, coercion, which is the theft of one's ability to use their own will in making decisions or decision-making processes, And finally, larceny, which is the theft of one's own personal property. And, that just about covers the material part of this, but what about the spiritual? Now, this could get pretty deep, but let's keep it to the shallow end of the pool for now, and keep it to time and attention, commonly known as spiritual currencies. To steal these is just as wrong to do. And the system does this in various ways. Think of sports balls, different political events, TV shows, news, schooling, which inculcates obedience to all of this. But anyways, moving on. Also, college is included in schooling, and jobs, etc. Things like this. Anything to keep your mind and you preoccupied with anything other than what is being done to enslave you under their violent control. Anything to keep you from doing anything of value to abolish this slavery. I call these time sucks. And many of these time sucks reinforce the culture of obedience. So it's built in within it, to reinforce its own self. It's like a self-preservation mechanism. That's what makes it satanic. Number 5 is to practice selflessness and to show care for others. Okay? And how we act is what generates your karma. Otherwise, known as what goes around comes around. In Hinduism, karma is the universal law of moral causation. Every action, whether good or bad, generates a reaction that influences one's current and future lives. It is closely tied to samsara, which is the cycle of rebirth, and moksha, which is the liberation from this cycle. Good actions, dharmic actions, lead to positive outcomes, while harmful actions lead to suffering. Karma is not a punishment or reward system imposed by a deity, but a natural law of the universe. When applied to how one can treat others, we see the importance of the principle of care. Without it, we are doomed to the de facto satanic mindset and culture that allows for a ruling class to exist. This lack of care for others is the long-term cause of slavery. Now, I cannot predict the future, but the universe operates off of these principles. Karma is not fate or destiny, but a dynamic process of cause and effect. If we do the morally right thing to do, we get better outcomes. This includes the amount of care we put out for others. We need to also remember that your intent matters. A good deed done with selfish motives will probably still generate or create negative karma. Number 6 is own yourself in spirit and action. Responsibility and accountability generate positively charged participation in life itself, no matter where you are, who you are with, or what you are doing. Everything that I've spoken about here leads to real self-ownership, real spiritual and physical maturity. It is not until more people come to truly own themselves will we begin to see improvements to the condition in which we live. You see, those satanic control freaks are scared of us little people. They're scared of us actually coming into our own and accepting responsibility for our own actions. They can only survive off of us abdicating this responsibility to them. In fact, much of what they have set up has only been to perpetuate this cycle. This is something I like to call intergenerational cultural conditioning. And number 7 is be bold. Now, if you're sitting here thinking to yourself, well, I'm only one person, what can I do? No effort that I could ever put in will ever amount to anything. Well, do I have news for you? If that were true, if that were really true, they wouldn't be trying to control you. The most evil thing in the known universe is the belief that one is morally obligated to obey a perceived authority over one's own individual consciousness and conscience, or one's own sense of right and wrong. And that's not to say a subjective sense of right and wrong. I don't mean it like that. I mean it like you have a sense of right and wrong. Why would you ignore that? Why would you just follow orders? Why would you just go and do wrong even though why would you say it's right to do wrong even though you know it's wrong? That's what I mean. You know, my good friend Brandon Martin said, "Be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid." You see, part of the intergenerational cultural conditioning that I mentioned includes making you timid and weak, makes you afraid of your own success. It makes you afraid to take risks. It makes you afraid to speak the truth. Jeremy Locke, the author of The End of All Evil, defines culture as the enforcer of authority. He writes, "Cultures are created to protect power structures. Culture is the enforcer of authority. Culture distorts principles in order to defend the authority of evil. Culture must convince you that it is not wrong when law subjugates your worth and destroys your freedom. Culture convinces people of this by perverting the concept of morality. Morality is liberty. Immorality is evil. The exercise and defense of freedom are moral. The destruction of freedom is immoral. This is the pure truth of morality. Prudence is the proper application of principle. Imprudence is foolishness. Prudence is not morality. It is not immoral to kick a heavy stone with your bare foot, but it would probably be foolish. Prudence is a question of applying the principles and wisdom you have gathered in your life to achieve the goals you have for yourself. This is made possible by liberty. Without liberty, prudence is meaningless. Morality must come before prudence. The great lie of culture is that authority is not bound by morality, and that authority can enforce its own prudence upon you. The great lie of culture is that you are worth less than law. Culture teaches that intentions of prudence can be enforced by law. In this fashion, they gain excuse to control the lives of people. In order for people to learn, grow, and find happiness, people must be free to test their understanding of principles. With freedom, they can do this by a process of faith, trial and error. In this fashion, children grow from immaturity to maturity. In this fashion, human beings gain wisdom. Cultures are agents of evil. The objective of evil is the damnation of your ability to grow strong in wisdom. The objective of evil is the destruction of your worth. In order to gain control over you, culture spreads the lie that authority is not bound by morality. It teaches that authority can destroy freedom at will, and claims prudence as the reason you should willingly submit. In the name of defending you, culture claims that the destruction of freedom is morality. Culture pretends that evil is good and that good is evil. Prudence can be found all around you. It is found in the choices you make every day. Even when a mistake is made, you learn prudence. Prudence cannot be enforced. To enforce prudence is law. Law is lie. Without the freedom to choose, you cannot learn prudence. You cannot be happy. Morality can be found all around you. Wherever you find morality, you will find joy. Wherever you find immorality, you will find misery. Culture enforces authority by destroying freedom with law. This is immorality. Nothing will ever change if we allow this to continue. In order to even begin the process of what I have laid out here in my speech, takes an incredible amount of courage. You are worth it. You are worth the effort. I am not telling anyone to go out and do anything that could be perceived as violent to the unbegun. What I'm telling you all, is that we can make the system obsolete. And this can only be done when we stop lying to ourselves and to others about the nature of the beast we are up against. And that takes courage to do. Their power is a myth. It is a lie. It is a superstition. And this is what has been conditioned into people over the course of multiple generations. That's why it's intergenerational cultural conditioning. Inter meaning over the course of many generations of this culture of obedience. It's been conditioned into people through schools, through the authorities. Your own parents have told you, you gotta follow the rules of these people. And they do all of this out of fear. Deep down inside, they do it out of fear. They don't do it out of love. They know these guys have power and that it's when you stand up, it's like a David and Goliath situation, but people tend to forget how that story ended. But that's what they think is going on, that they can't do anything. They're so demoralized against it because they've been taught to be demoralized. They were never taught that there was something else. This is all that they were taught that exists. This is all they know. This is the culture that they are in. And this is what they perpetuate through generations. The real authority is the one you have over yourself. If there is any hope for long-lasting change, people need to repudiate these systems' claims of authority. This battle will not be won by the meek. Any real change starts with the self, and only then will we be able to change the world around us. The bravest thing anyone can do is recognize in themselves the wrongdoings that they have committed. You need to admit that they were wrong, and then commit to changing that. Change that behavior. Change your own behavior. So let me ask you, in the face of all of this, is the freedom of your children worth it? I'm not trying to do an appeal to emotion here, but they're going to inherit a future. What do you want that future to look like? Okay, so you don't have kids. How about this? Is the knowledge of is the knowledge you will have gained, or will you have is knowing when you leave this place, knowing that you did everything in your power to abolish slavery while you were here, is having that with you worth it? I'd say so. I'd say it is. Special thank yous in no particular order to Richard Grove, Mark Passio, Jeffrey Hahn, James Corbett, Lysander Spooner, Murray Rothbard, Etienne de la Buissy Squared, David James Rodriguez, Brandon Martin, Auburn Herbert, Larkin Rose, and Jeremy Locke. All of your works have had a profound impact on me and have aided in completing not only this speech, but many of the other things that I put out there. Some of you are friends. Others have been lost to history. All of you are warriors for freedom. Also, a special thank you to the organizers of Funnel 5. Without your combined efforts, a stage such as this would not be available to such a loquacious fella such as myself. Will, Chris, Leslie, and Derek, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. It is truly an honor to be here. I love you guys. And thank you to my children, the spark that ignited my flame. May there one day be shade under which you can sit. Last but not least by a lot, thank you, Jessica, my wife. Without her intrepid support and unwavering love, I would be as a ship lost at sea. Thank you for enjoying this speech. I'm James Cordiner. Go to voluntaryistacademy.com. It's been scrolling under there the whole time. Check out the rest of my stuff. YouTube, Rumble, wherever you get your podcasts. And enjoy the rest of the conference. There's a lot of, I hope you're enjoying the conference, everybody. I hope you gain something out of this speech. I hope at least something I said gets you thinking and gets you motivated to get out there and create and not destroy. I love you all. And remember that you own yourself, period. No one else owns you. The condition of slavery, albeit very real, is very fragile. It's very, very fragile. So we can go out there and we can make a big difference. We can make a very big difference. So get on it. And I'll catch you guys later. Peace.